Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Season 2, Round 4 of the NRRL's 100% Sunday division. Today, we take to the Hungaroring in Hungary for what promises to be an 18-minute qualifying session and a 70 laps filled with action, chaos, and surprises. My name is JP, I'm your commentator. Joining me tonight in the commentary booth is my brother Lewis. Welcome to the stream, Lewis. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to this one. We've done a race in Hungary before, as we were talking about before we went live, and that was a very, very interesting day that set the path off to one of our front runners becoming, well, one of our front runners, and you would very much hope for the same type of race.
Most certainly, Hungary, a very technical track, and qualifying can prove important. So the next 16 minutes and 45 seconds of qualifying could pay dividends to the drivers' 70-lap Grand Prix ahead of them. But nonetheless, I'm sure those 70 laps will be action-packed nonetheless. Quite hard to overtake around this circuit. It's often compared to Monaco without the walls. And it is going to be difficult for the drivers to try and make moves, but nonetheless, a very technical circuit, very hard to get the setup hooked up, very difficult to get the car in the place that you need it to be. And our 15 drivers tonight will be hoping that they have managed to do exactly that.
Very much so. We have a few out on track now. I have no grip. Matt Tudor, Dan Lovett, Paul Codd, Hash, Meldrum, and Matt Connor all tend to be around maybe that really third to ninth kind of midfield pack. Out of those so far that we've seen on track, Jack, who would you go towards as somebody you'd be keeping an eye on? Because for me, it would probably be Dan Lovett.
To be honest, same here. Newly crowned Friday's world champion on Friday, doing an incredible job in the Fridays division, capturing his first world championship and becoming only the third world champion in NRRL history, alongside Sab Gaming and Mikey Boy in the Formula 2 tier. So I'd say definitely both the world champions I would be keeping an eye on, those being Mikey Boy and Dan Lovett. But Dan, he's been struggling in recent weeks, but he's had a lot of form in the Friday tier. Just needs to try and capitalise on that momentum as on board with Matt Connor. He's been off the track and making a few escapades on this lap multiple times, as he's going to be the first driver to set a lap, just coming through the penultimate and now final corner. Plenty of battery to use for the Ferrari driver, somehow not invalidating his lap. And he comes to the line now, obviously goes fastest, being the only man to set a lap. The Sauber behind him, I believe, invalidated. Meldrum goes to provisional pole. That's a good lap from the Haas driver, a 16.7. And we've seen Meldrum on pole, I believe, twice before in NRRL history. Been about 2 months since he was last on pole position. And for a man that races nearly every day in NRRL, that is a fairly long stretch without a pole position. Could tonight be the night?
Well, from his perspective, you would obviously hope so, but this could be one of those circuits where potentially, even though it is very difficult to overtake, potentially being on pole could to a point be a disadvantage. Obviously, we've seen how chaotic it can be heading into turn one. So I'm sure all of those drivers would prefer pole to second, obviously. But if you're in that kind of second, third, fourth area, I don't think it would be too much of a difference, really.
That is very true. And interestingly as well, it is the second longest run down to turn one of the season. The longest run, obviously, being Mexico, and as the times now start to tumble, and MCL goes to provisional pole by nearly a second. That's a mighty lap from the Sauber driver. 15.8. Bracy took it for a second with a 16.7. And those three very, very close together. Bracy, Dan Lovett and Meldrum all in the 16.7s. As DGH goes into 5th with a 16.9. And all the drivers just start to settle down and get their laps in now. Mikey boy going onto his flying lap, and definitely going to be a driver to watch in this session. Mikey, one of the drivers that's running full traction, which not many drivers do this sort of stage of the Formula One games. But Hungary, a very traction orientated circuit, that will definitely help him.
Absolutely. And obviously, as we see more of these times coming, you do see, as you say, the times drop. Still 15.8. I would still expect that that would improve by probably about 3, 4, maybe even 5 tenths. But that gap is quite impressive, nearly a full second. And we've said before about could potentially that be the lap that ends the fight for pole, the first lap. You get the feeling that could be the one that does it here.
Most certainly. I mean, a 15.8 for your first lap, nearly a second clear. You know, we've still got people like Mikey and Jamaican Jam that are still yet to set laps, but it's going to be difficult to see them taking those honours away. And I mean, Mikey with a 16.8, only 5th. Jamaican Jam just going on to his lap now, so we'll keep an eye on that as Meloon is just coming round the penultimate corner. But I mean, we've heard whisperings before of drivers maybe being a little bit too quick. Well, a 15.8 compared to a 16.7 as Meloon goes into P2 with a 16.2. So he's not incredibly far off. But I mean, even a 4/10 gap in NRRL is definitely something to keep your eyes on.
Yeah, we do not see it very often, so it does become far more of quite the event when it does. But obviously that gap already been halved down to 4, which is still for NRRL pretty large. But given how quickly these times are dropping, I wouldn't be shocked to where we see that come back within that kind of 1-2 tenth region. But if you're MCL, you must be feeling very confident with that because only one driver has got within even half a second of you.
Most certainly. Jamaican Jam is on a good lap though, and he will look to try and challenge those top spots as he rounds the final corner now, deploying whatever battery he's got left. Cuts that gap down now to about, exactly 2 tenths. It's still quite a large gap, but I mean, it all really depends on if MCL can improve, and you would imagine, knowing the pace of the Sauber, there will still be time in the pocket for him, and that will definitely be worrying the other drivers. Only one of 3 men to not set a lap thus far is Hash. He is going on to, I believe, his second flying lap now in the Aston Martin. Hash has been struggling recently, normally finds himself sort of towards the lower end of the pack, but will just be looking to gain that ever valuable experience as he runs wide again and invalidates. And this is one thing that Hash has struggled with, is a lot of invalidations, and that does normally see him down towards the back of the grid. But again, gaining valuable experience in racing is the Aston Martin driver, and will only continue to improve as he grows into his racing boots. Dinosaur is on his outlap, as is Dean Pryor, I believe a new face to NRRL this week. V-Carb making a new signing as Mikey goes up to 4th with a 16.4. Bracey will have the chance to try and reply to that. Dan Lovett is on his flying lap now, currently P6. Will definitely be looking to improve from there. But Dan Lovett, I would almost argue, is NRRL's Mr. Consistent. You know, he's not fighting for wins incredibly often. He's not fighting for pole positions, but you will always find him in the top 5, top 6. And that's just him racking up points very regularly. And ultimately, over the course of a championship season, that is exactly what you need.
Very much so. Even though we've said a lot about how it's been a rough few weeks, whenever he does finish races, it is very much in that kind of 3rd to 7th really ballpark. So just chipping away, getting those points, which even though when we first started, he was very much up in the podium spots fighting for victories. There has been a slight fall off, but not a ridiculous amount. And now that that pace is starting to just improve, he could be a very, very serious threat to the rest of those at the top.
Definitely so. Hash finally going to be able to set a clean lap in this session. Comes around the final corner and goes into P9 with a 17.1. Dean Pryor is now coming round the final corner and goes P5 in his first outing in NRRL. A provisional lap putting in P5. That is most certainly a lovely place to be.
Definitely one to keep an eye on. He'll be looking to impress this weekend. And so far, he's put himself up there with the best that the field has to offer.
Ryan Brooks joining this session, and he should get a lap to try and get himself involved in qualifying. We know Ryan Brooks will definitely be one to keep an eye on. Always very, very rapid is Ryan. Mr. Jabe, the only man to have not set a lap thus far, is going on to his lap now, and into turn 1 he goes in the McLaren. McLaren, the newly crowned Constructors World Champions in real Formula 1. And Mr. Jabe looking to try and improve from his current form and try and show why that car is so quick.
As now we say quite often, we reach the kind of low point of session where everyone kind of sits inside and just waits for the final few minutes. We don't see many laps. Still quite a few drivers out on track, but many seem like they are coming in. Jamaican Jam just slightly down on his first sector. Not sure if he's going for another lap here. You would expect probably not. But he's making his way through fairly well. I have no grip. Matt Tudor, those two coming out on their outlaps. Maybe a little bit early. They could potentially be going for 2 runs. But Jamaican Jam a second down in the middle sector and invalidated. So pretty sure he will be into the pit lane there. And now just the 2 out on track, I believe. On outlaps, anyway.
Gingernut in chat asking, does this league operate only on Sundays and is it 50%? I'm sure you will be delighted to know that it isn't only Sundays we race. We bring racing action on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays. 5 days of racing action for you with plenty of different rule sets and session lengths. We've got Tuesdays and Wednesdays, which are 50% races, Wednesday being the Super League division. Then Friday is a 100% race, Saturday is a Formula 2 sprint and feature race, and Sunday, which you are watching live with us today on Twitch and on TikTok, is 100% format. As we've got 2 drivers yet to set laps. Ryan Brooks is on his outlap. Mr. Jabe came into the pits after invalidating on his first flying attempt, and Ryan Brooks locking up and going round into the chicane on his outlap. Class word as one final link. You can find us on TikTok, Gingernut. I will just quickly confirm the username for you. I don't want to lead you to the wrong place. I'll whack it in the chat for you, my friend, and we will get you hooked up. So if you type in on TikTok, NRRL_league, you can find us there. And there is a Discord link in the bio. And you just copy that from the bio. And you type it in to your Discord application. And we will get you in the server. And then you just message the owner, Dan Lovett. He will reply to you as soon as possible. Always on the ball is Dan Lovett. And we look forward to seeing you out on track. Ryan Brooks is going into turn 1 now on his flying lap. And Lewis, definitely one to keep an eye on is Ryan.
Absolutely. We've seen he has had races where he has been up towards the top, maybe hasn't got, let's say, the consistency of somebody like Dan, but when he has that pace, he's definitely someone that those at the top should be aware of. It's just whether he can hook that lap up in this session, which at the minute it doesn't look like he's been able to do so far.
Doesn't seem like it, and invalidating is Ryan Brooks, so I doubt he's going to have time to come back in the pit lane and then do another lap. So you would hope for Ryan's sake that he's got the fuel to do another lap. We've got MCL and Jamaican Jam who are still in the pit lane. Dan Lovett is on his out lap at the minute, and I'm sure will be coming out absolutely punching to try and nick away another position. Currently third, which is good for Dan Lovett. DGH moves himself up into fourth, but we will keep our eyes on Dan. Jamaican Jam and MCL both coming out of the pits, and they will begin their out laps. But all eyes now to the Ferrari. Lewis, take us through this lap.
So the Ferrari of Dan heading into turn 1 can always be a difficult corner, easy to lock up. DRS down towards 2, downhill. You got to pick your braking point right, not run the car too wide out, as it is straight into turn 3 and up towards turn 4. Probably the most difficult part of the track the easiest part to invalidate. He gets through it nice, just under a tenth up. Won't be enough for pole at the minute, but the middle sector is where you can gain some big times. Getting through it nice, and you keep it on the track. As we say, very easy to invalidate. He's getting through nicely. Easy to run wide here. He doesn't. Nearly 2 tenths up. So if he can just gain another 2 or so tenths in this final sector, he could be on for pole. Round the last 2. The other car gets out of the way. Round the final corner. ERS, DRS to the line. It is a 10.5, just under 10.5 improvement. It's a best of third.
66 milliseconds up was MCL through the first sector, and crucially 2 more sectors to try and improve time, but he goes a little bit wide out of the chicane and clips the grass, and a big slide there. Oversteer moment for MCL, and now off the track, and that almost guarantees he won't improve. So over to the Mercedes of Jamaican Jam. Mercedes taking pole around Singapore this weekend. Clearly the Brackley outfit in good fashion, as Hash picks up a 5-place grid penalty for a collision with Ryan Brooks. That's an interesting incident. But for Jamaican Jam, as he comes towards the end of Sector 2 now, he is 2.5 tenths up. And that is exactly what he would need, as long as the car can stick through the final 2 corners. Through the penultimate one he comes now. And can the Works Mercedes put itself to the top of the pile? Round the final corner now. Enable the DRS here. Is it pole for Jamaican Jam? Yes, it is. A 1:15.797 for the Works Mercedes driver. And he takes pole position away from MCL, who has also been displaced by the Alpine of Meloon. It's MCL who's third. F1 Mikey Boy slots into fourth. Dan Lovett will be fifth, with DGH in sixth. Dean Pryor on debut is in seventh. It is an I Have No Grip in eighth, with Mr. Jabe in ninth, Bracey 10th and Meldrum 11th, with Hash no front wing after that collision with Ryan Brooks, and Ryan Brooks not able to set a lap time because of that, so he will start from P17. Dinosaur in 13th, with Matt Tudor 14th, Matt Connor 15th, and Paul Codd in 16th. But for Jamaican Jam, he found the time when he needed it, and an MCL pole looked absolutely certain until the Works Mercedes driver stepped out there. Incredible stuff.
And I think he'll be kicking himself, because at MCL, that is, because for most of the session, He probably would have thought with the gap he had that he had that in the bag, but things can change very quickly. And now, not even on the front row, he has to find this victory if he's going to get it in a much different way.
Now, it is a very long run down into turn one. I believe about 650 meters down to the first corner. Compare that to Mexico, which I believe is about 800 meters from pole to turn one. It is a very long run, and pole position maybe not the ideal place to start, but it is going to be close between them all, and we always know that we can have a potential bit of Bottas bowling down into turn one, but overall in qualifying only a tenth could separate the top three. It's Jamaican Jam from Meloon. MCL will start on the second row with F1 Mikey Boy, and on the third row Dan Lovett and DGH. And what a session that was. Very, very close between absolutely everyone. Hash will obviously start from the back after getting that 5-place penalty after the collision with Ryan Brooks. And what a session that was, Lewis.
Absolutely. You didn't quite know who would have it come the end in those final few minutes, but I think it sets us up for a very, very exciting race as you have Mikey, who we've seen is very, very impressive around here in that 4th place, alongside MCL, who will be very, very angry, I'm sure, that he hasn't took pole there. And the top two are not two drivers that will let go of those places easily. So it sets us up for a potential 4, 5, even 6-way fight.
Exactly that, and a short lap is Hungary, so while there is only one DRS zone, it's quite hard to break away from that DRS duct, and we can see DRS trains start to get formed, and that will only involve more people in the fight for the win. And that's exactly what we want to see ahead of the 70 laps that are in store for us. And these 70 laps are truly going to be something very, very special. Jamaican Jam on pole, I believe. I don't think it's a maiden pole position for Jamaican Jam, but it's definitely, I want to say maybe his second or third pole position in the Mercedes. So maybe a little bit nervy for him as he pulls away from his grid slot. And knowing that it is such a long run down to turn one, he will definitely be a bit nervy in that cockpit, I would imagine, but will be absolutely ecstatic to have taken pole position.
Absolutely. He had to fight for it, as you have to do in every session, but he managed to get that lap in when it mattered most, and that's why he will be in the place on the grid that he is. And he'll be looking at it knowing that he can definitely go one step further and win this race.
Exactly that, but 70 laps ahead, and while qualifying it can be important, there is a lot of time for positions to change. And as much as I say that it is quite difficult to overtake around this circuit, we all know that 70 laps in NRRL, anything can change.
Absolutely. And it is not as simple as just where everyone started will be where everyone finishes. I would very much expect that someone will get themselves into that top 4 that didn't really start towards it. And I have a feeling that somebody in that top 4 could have a pretty poor race and see them drop back quite a lot.
There's always a chance of absolutely anything happening in Formula One, but then you add in the factor of this league and how competitive it is. And I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if Hash starting last came through to win this Grand Prix. 70 laps around Hungary. It's such a difficult circuit, and especially mentally for the drivers to try and stay focused and locked in for all 70 laps. I mean, I've been racing in the Friday division for the past 2 weeks, and it's such a struggle to try and stay focused for as long as the races are. It's near impossible.
It can be, yeah, especially when you have that period, especially around tracks like this or Zandvoort or tracks where it's far more difficult to overtake, that kind of 40, 50, 60 lap period where not much is happening and you're counting more on the strategy, very, very difficult to keep your head down. But if you're going to win the race, that is what the elite drivers have to do.
Exactly that, and that is what separates the good from the great. And Hungary is always one of those circuits that really pulls that out. As we now look to the grid for the 5 red lights, the fabled 5 red lights, ahead of 70 laps of the Hungarian Grand Prix. They were held for a very, very long time, but it is lights out, and away we go. And Melun with a lot of wheel spin away from second place, and MCL already looking to attack. Jamaican Jam with the dream start, makes it through, and there's contact there between MCL and Melun. We've got drivers running wide all throughout turn 1, and we've got Mr. Jabe, who is completely off the circuit and plummeting down to last. It's F1 Mikey Boy who inherits second. MCL manages to stay in third as we've got more contact through turn 2 and hashes off onto the grass as we're nearly going 3 wide up into turn 4 here, and there's even more contact between Meldrum and Dinosaur, I believe. No damage for the Haas driver, but losing positions. Jamaican Jam, though, perfectly away from pole position. He will most certainly be happy with that one.
But he won't be happy with who he's got behind him and on the tyres. It's hard for Jamaican Jam. It's softs for Mikey. And this is certainly something to pay attention to. Obviously, last time we came to Hungary, Mikey showed everyone that day the driver he is, and the track that really started his ascent to the driver we know now. And you get the feeling that this could be very, very quickly that we have a new race leader.
Most certainly, the soft compound tyre is a bold choice from Mikey, but a man that always makes bold choices with the strategy and somehow always makes them work. MCL is right on the back of that battle and will look to capitalise. Dan Lovett also in there, ready for the fight. Dean Pryor on debut up to 5th. And he is right there with the leaders on the hard compound tyres. Melun also up there after a very poor start and damage to the front wing of that Alpine. And we saw contact between Melun and MCL into turn 1, and that is evidently where he picked up that damage. And a very poor start for the Alpine.
Not the ideal first 2 for him. Still got 68 laps to turn it around, so not over yet. But not good reading from what we've seen so far. He is managing to keep himself within distance of the top 5. So if he can just get onto, or just stay in this DRS train, it is so much more powerful around here. He's very much still a threat at the end of this race.
DRS is enabled as we move on to lap 3, and Mikey tries to get his way past Jamaican Jam. He pulls to the outside line. To the outside of turn 1 we go with the McLaren. He now looks for the switchback on the Mercedes. He's got the straight line speed. Does he have the grip to go round the outside of turn 2? He roars round the outside. The Mercedes holds the inside line, but unfortunately doesn't have the grip to try and fight it. He's going to look to the outside of turn 4, but there will never be a move on there. And on lap 3 of 70, we've got ourselves a new race leader in the form of Mikey.
And it is not something that we would be too shocked about. We've seen this happen time and time again. And now the question is, can anyone stop him on the current tyres he is on from just driving up the road with this one? You would hope not. But you get the feeling he's staying within that second on the first lap since the overtake. Can he do it for the next 5, 10, 15? I don't think so.
Mikey, always a driver to be reckoned with, and on soft compound tyres, with a driver behind him on hard compound tyres. And that is no insult to Jamaican Jam's pace. We know he is absolutely rapid, but with Mikey on soft compound tyres, it's going to be very difficult to see how the Works Mercedes is going to keep tabs with him. But he's doing a good job of it so far. But MCL will also rock up to the back of the works Mercedes and try and apply pressure. And that will only hurt him as Ryan Brooks comes into the pits and retires on lap 4.
Not an ideal evening for him, but I can't say I saw what would have caused that.
No, that is very weird. He may have had damage, but I mean, lap 4 of 70, there's still plenty of time to try and gain that back. A very weird call there.
Not sure unless there's a problem that either of us hadn't seen. I don't think I would have done that in Ryan's position. As you say, still plenty of time to make it up. But that is quite odd 4 laps in.
Most certainly. MCL currently running in third. Jamaican Jam is doing enough, keeping tabs on F1 Mikey Boy to be able to stick with him, and is just getting close enough in the DRS zones to maybe have a little sniff into the braking zones, but nothing doing for the Mercedes at the moment. MCL in third, right behind the Mercedes, as Jamaican Jam runs a little bit wide through there, but doesn't lose incredible amounts of time. We've got Dan Lovett in fourth, who's keeping tabs with them. Dinosaur also comes into the pits to retire from the session. Dean Pryor is in fifth on the hard compound tyres, doing well to keep up with this train. Again, on debut is Dean Pryor. We've got Meloon, who runs in sixth, with Bracey in seventh. Matt Connor is in eighth place, 4 seconds shy of the lead battle. It's an I Have No Grip in ninth, 1.2 seconds behind that. It's then Matt Tudor in 10th on the soft compound tyres. DGH is behind him. It's then Hash, Paul Codd, Mr. Jabe and Meldrum, who have both, I believe, come into the pits for new front wings. And they are fighting it out down at the back of the pack. But crucially, Jamaican Jam is a little bit closer than he has been to Mikey on previous occasions. And is there a chance that Jamaican Jam can try and slip through? He's most certainly going to look for it. He's got the pace on the McLaren driver. To the outside of turn one he goes. Is there enough room and enough grip for him? That question answered immediately. Yes, there is. And Jamaican Jam retakes the lead. I did not think I'd be saying that. Mikey will just try and slot him behind and make sure that he can keep tabs on him and stick as close as possible, because on those soft compound tyres they will still be very quick. We've got MCL in third looking to pick up the pieces, as is Dan Lovett. Dean Pryor just beginning to fall a little bit off the back of the lead train, but keeping in the DRS thanks to his use of the ERS system. And Mikey surely will be in prime position to try and retake that lead that he lost a lap ago. 4/10 is the gap as they go through the final corner. Battery and DRS enabled as we now plummet towards turn one. Doesn't look close enough for a move into turn one, but he's going for a very late send down the inside. There's contact between the pair of them, and the Mercedes runs off. But in doing so, stays ahead, and now, ever the opportunist MCL goes through on the McLaren. Dan Lovett is also looking down the inside of the McLaren. Nothing doing for the Ferrari, but drama on lap 7 as Jamaican Jam, forced off the track, regains the position in doing so. MCL takes the position away from Mikey, and that is a horror beginning to lap 7 for the McLaren driver. Ryan Brooks coming into the chat and saying he can't drive at 40 FPS, so evidently some sort of technical issue for Ryan Brooks. And unfortunately for him, he is out of this race very, very early on. And Mikey actually looking more under pressure from Dan Lovett than he is on putting pressure on MCL, and the Ferrari will surely have a great chance into turn one. MCL in the Sauber looking to try and gain on the rear wing of Jamaican Jam and gaining up towards the back of him, nothing doing, and Dan Lovett just still stuck behind the rear wing of Mikey. But this is starting to get a little bit fiery now.
And just to go back to that incident with Mikey and Jam there, that could have been a lot worse for both. Even though Mikey has lost some time, that could have seen, with a move that late, both drivers out. So, still relatively lucky to be in the race.
Most certainly that could have been big contact. And Mikey, I don't even think he meant to go for that move. I think he was braking down into turn one, suddenly realised, oh crap, I'm about to go into the back of him, and had to send it down the inside, basically to save the pair of them, because he would have completely wiped out Jamaican Jam and completely wiped out his front wing. But the soft tyres now, after only 7 laps around this circuit, I mean, we know this track, degradation can be very bad, but after 7 laps, tyre wear kicking in, he's fallen off the back of MCL and now dives into the pit lane.
Could that potentially be, well, getting in front didn't work, so let's try this? Could very much well be.
Dan Lovett now 1.6 seconds behind that lead battle. MCL still looking to gain on Jamaican Jam, but crucially, with Jamaican Jam on the hard compound tyres and able to stay ahead, he is really doing himself a solid in trying to win this race. Dean Pryor is in 4th and is right on the back of Dan Lovett, and the tyre degradation looking absolutely horrible. As you can see, Dan Lovett already beginning to struggle for grip, and Dean Pryor only getting quicker.
Very strong debut to introduce himself to the NRRL world, and could certainly be one, given a performance like this, that will have a lot of promise and potential in the future.
Exactly that. VCarb have most certainly been using the 5-star scouts and have picked out an absolutely brilliant driver, as Dan Lovett once again going very wide out of the penultimate corner, and Dean Pryor looking absolutely primed for a move down turn one, but not the greatest exit out of the final corner. And he will gain on the Ferrari, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. Jinx out to the inside to try and lull Dan Lovett into a mistake. You're not really going to spook Dan Lovett into a mistake. And a lot of wheel spin there for Dean Pryor coming out of turn one. Again, just trying to spook Dan Lovett into making a defensive move, but nothing doing. And Dean Pryor, those rear tyres, I'm hoping for his sake, are about 5 million degrees, because he is getting a lot of wheel spin.
Still in a fairly decent position, but it can be frustrating around here. Obviously, DRS trains can be massive at times. That has effects on all sorts. And it clearly is having, it would very much look like the temperatures around this circuit is doing the same thing for him.
We know that tyre temperatures are a big talking point on F1 25. It is difficult to try and maintain the temperatures, and especially around a track like this that is so technically demanding, that requires a lot of front end grip and rear end grip, because I mean, all the slow speed corners you need the front end grip for to be able to turn the car in and out of corners. And then out of the corners, the traction zones are so important that you almost need to be flooring it out of every corner. And that cooks every single one of your Pirellis. Mikey sets the fastest lap of the race, currently down in 11th after making that very early pit stop. And Jamaican Jam is beginning to pull a gap on MCL here. And I must say I'm very surprised by that. Only 10 laps in, and the medium tyres already giving way. And I mean, you'd imagine this race with a 2-stop. Could we see some drivers 3-stop here? Especially the likes of Mikey and Matt Tudor, who started on the soft compound tyres, because they do not seem to be working at all. The Pirellis really struggling around here.
Very much could be an option. I'd very much look at somebody like Mikey for a potential 3-stop. Don't see how those tyres make it through 61 laps. I could see there being another couple of stops, but the problem is with the amount of time you lose in a pit stop, is it even worth it?
Well, I mean, that is the big talking point. It depends how much time you're losing a second, because yes, you may lose, let's say, 20, 25 seconds in a pit stop, but if you're losing a second and a half, 2 seconds a lap, you know, give or take 10 laps, and you might as well have made the pit stop. Dan Lovett, 1.8 seconds behind MCL, who is now 2.3 seconds and growing behind Jamaican Jam. Dean Pryor still stuck behind the Ferrari, and I'm sure maybe getting a little bit frustrated in the dirty air now. And on debut, Dean, we know, looking to make a name for himself. Well, overtaking the league owner, that would certainly be a statement.
Very much so. We've been saying he's one to keep an eye on, and could there be a better way to introduce yourself than debut at a very difficult circuit and be in the fight for a podium? I don't really think there is many better ways.
Exactly that, and I mean, a debut podium, you know, you're talking the likes of Lewis Hamilton that did that, but again, I guess you are then talking Kevin Magnussen when you also bring up that point. And Lewis Hamilton and Kevin Magnussen, two very different Formula One careers, I must say, and I'm sure that Dean Pryor would rather be like Hamilton, but it big snap of oversteer there on the exit of turn 2. And I mean, I've been on board with him for a while, and we've seen big wheel spin moments out of turn 1. And out of turn 1 that lap 13 of 70, almost careering off into the wall there.
That could have gone, as I've said already with other incidents, that could have gone very, very badly. Still keeping himself in good distance to those in front, but could this potentially be him trying to maybe impress and overdrive? Could be a sign, or is it just a momentary mistake? I'd like to think it is the second one, but this could be round 2 again here down that main straight.
Exactly that. It's, I guess, really lap 13 and round 13, because these two have been fighting for a lot of this race. About 5/10 was the gap out of the final corner, and Dean with the ERS will try and fight, but Dan Lovett draining his battery in the process as well. And again, Dean just trying to spook Dan into some sort of mistake, and Dan has gone a little bit wide there, and there's contact between them. And you would imagine that contact may actually keep Dan ahead, but now to the inside goes the V-carb. Dan goes a little bit wider than the V-carb and manages to keep the position. But you'd imagine without that contact, Dean would have been through.
You've got to try and iron out those mistakes, and especially if you're in the mind of Dan, who, even with that championship win a few days ago, with the run of form we've seen on Sundays, one mistake can be magnified to where you think, is there going to be a bigger one later on? He's managed to keep himself pointing in the right direction, but he's got to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Most certainly, and I mean, those medium tyres, we saw they were going off around lap 9, lap 10, and they're only going to be feeling worse with every corner, let alone every lap. About to be 14 laps worn, and this is going to be a struggle, as we've got a yellow flag in Sector 3, and that is Hash, who's gone off into the penultimate corner. No damage for him though, so all well. As towards turn 1 we go again with Dean Pryor. Dan Lovett remaining defensive. Dean looking for the switchback, and he's made the move open up for himself here. And now to the outside towards turn 2. Is Dan Lovett down to hold it down the inside? Is Dean Pryor able to get the better grip? He swoops around the outside. Lovely move from the debutant and moves himself up into the podium places. Lovely stuff from the V-Carb.
A very, very good move. We'll now see what he's like in defense. Dan sticking with him. But this is a battle that for the past few laps has been something you can't really take your eyes off. And they could be going for it in just under 30 seconds again. Sticking with him and down that main straight. We could see Dan get back past. That will be his goal, of course. Dean just slightly pulling that gap out. So here we go then.
Mikey, I must say, has picked an absolutely awful time to come into the pit lane. He has been stuck in traffic. He's only made up one position since he pitted, and that was from when Paul Codd pitted. He's very, very close to the rear wing of the Williams ahead of him, of DGH, but not really gaining much time. He should be able to make the move down here into turn 1. Late on the brakes from the McLaren, does get the move done. DGH will look for the cutback, but nothing doing. So Mikey does finally make a move, but after 7 laps on those tyres, Mikey is struggling in the traffic and in the dirty air, and that will only harm his tyres even more. And this is not a very well-run race from the McLaren. And I mean, we rarely see Mikey make mistakes, and this is a very rare occasion where I must say he has most certainly made one. Currently in 9th, not really gaining any time on the leaders, and wearing in those tyres, pulling the laps down.
Very difficult to decide when you hit due to that DRS train getting stuck in one can cost you lots, and he's made a position back up to 8th, but certainly pitted at the wrong time, as you say, gets himself caught in a train and has cost himself a big chunk of time.
Through the final corner we go now, and you'd imagine it'll be quite an easy move on Matt Connor, who's got 7 seconds to the car ahead. Matt will not drain his battery. He knows that is in his fight today, and Mikey makes his way up into 7th position past the Ferrari, and now has a bit of clean air to try and show his pace. MCL still losing time to Jamaican Jam, 4.8 seconds, and growing is the gap. 3 seconds they've got to Dean Pryor. There's a yellow flag for I have no grip, who's been round. No damage for him, but through turn 2, a loss of grip for the Red Bull. And that was the momentary yellow flag we saw. Dan Lovett falling off the back of Dean Pryor now. And Meloon looking a little bit more stable on his medium compound tyres. Will have a great chance of trying to get past Dan on this lap.
He will certainly be liking his chances. Dan might just have DRS to protect himself. Although, I don't think he will. I think he's out of it now. So, an even bigger boost for Melon. Here we go then. DRS, ERS towards turn 1. Is he close enough? Little bit too far back. Gets caught up on the grass and goes round.
Into the wall goes the Alpine driver. Resets to track, which he will no doubt be awarded a penalty for after the race. Both end plates missing on the front of that Alpine. I believe there may have been contact at the rear with Bracey. Funnily enough, I was on board with Meloon and I heard the contact, so I switched to the off-board camera, and that's when I saw Bracey ghosted and then Meloon go round. So I do wonder if that was Bracey running into the back of the Alpine causing him to go into the wall. But nonetheless, as much as Bracy might get a penalty for that contact, Meloun has only gone and got himself one by resetting to track, which is clearly in the rulebook not allowed.
Yeah, it can be easier at times, but it very much will endanger the rest of the field. So you just have to really suck it up. You've made the mistake, put yourself in that position, get yourself out of it on your own. And in he comes then for a pit stop, and I would assume a new front wing.
Dan Lovett also into the pit lane for a new set of the hard compound tyres, and really the first of the leaders to pit. You would expect MCL will probably react to that pit stop, being on the same strategy as Dan Lovett. You would imagine that he will be into the pit lane to almost replicate what the Ferrari is doing. Dan will try and get his head down. He's got some clean air ahead of him, and he will need a crucial outlap if he is to undercut MCL, who is 5.6 seconds behind Jamaican Jam. And I do believe that MCL will be coming into the pits because he's just beginning to gain a little bit more time back on Jamaican Jam. So evidently pushing is the Sauber driver. And he makes his way now round the final corner and isn't coming into the pit lane. So staying out is MCL. 3.8 seconds is the gap that he's got to Dean Pryor in third. And it'll be interesting to see how that gap begins to fluctuate now that both of them are in clean air. It's then about 3.3 seconds gap to Bracy. But now make that Mikey as Mikey moves down the inside up into fourth position. Obviously very out of sync with the rest of the field after starting on the soft compound tyres. And up to fourth, but Mikey, you would imagine, will have to make an extra pit stop than everyone else.
Absolutely, because not only has he pitted early, but being stuck destroyed a lot quicker than they would have anyway. So a really not ideal opening 20 laps for him. But if there is a driver that can turn this round in the next 50, there would be few or none that you would expect to be able to turn it round more than Mikey.
Exactly that. One of the top drivers in every division that he races in. And Mikey, if anyone is going to be able to make this strategy work, it will be him. He's always a little bit weird and wacky with the strategies and does love the soft compound tyres. And I'm sure if anyone can make it work, it's him.
Still going around fairly well is Mikey, but in those final stages of the race, I feel like is when we'll start to see the problems he has had in these opening 20s start to rear their head again. Slowly gaining on Dean Pryor, so this could be a battle to pay attention to. Welcome to the league, Dean. Your first race, you'll be driving against probably the most consistent driver we've seen in the past few months.
Definitely a test for Dean, but I mean, if he wants to be up towards the front, he's going to get a taste of what that is going to feel like. Very different strategies for them. 20 laps that Dean has been on those hard compound tyres, 12 laps that Mikey has been on his. But Dean, you can imagine, will do his best to try and defend without losing any time, as he is still in the fight with MCL and Jamaican Jam, especially MCL being on the different strategy. But Mikey is gaining on the V-carb. And now out the final corner and towards turn one, will Mikey have an opportunity to try and get past? Dean is also draining his battery and will look to stay ahead, as there you see a car coming out of the pit lane. That is Meldrum, I believe. Or was that Hash? I can't really tell. But through turn 1 and 2, Mikey is gaining, but not enough. And Dean in his first race. You've got to hand it to him. Doing an absolutely incredible job.
Very much so. And this Mikey and Dean battle, we are not too far away from seeing it commence as they are right with each other. How long can Dean keep him behind? 8-lap older tyres for the V-carb. Can he try and keep him behind just that little bit longer?
It's going to be difficult for him, especially with the McLaren being so close to him. And with the fresher tyres, it will most certainly be a difficulty to try and hold him behind. But Mikey knows what he is doing. Dean will do his utmost to try and defend. But unfortunately, I think this battle is to come to an end as Mikey goes down the inside into turn 1. Easier move as you would like, and moves up back into the podium places.
Not too shocking to have seen that. The question is, can he keep it? He's done well to get himself back up there with what has happened in this opening part. As I have no grip, he retires. Not too sure what for. But can Mikey keep himself in this position? If there's a driver that can do it, it's definitely him. But will the circumstances allow for it?
I must say 22 laps on the medium compound tyres from MCL is a very impressive feat. And I must say, I am quite surprised to see him A, still on the track, B, not in a wall, and C, only 7.8 seconds off of the lead, and he is still staying out.
Not too sure if I'd have made that choice myself.
Lap 24 of 70 here around the Hungaroring, and it is Jamaican Jam that leads from MCL in second, F1 Mikey Boy in third, Dean Pryor on debut in fourth, Bracey is in fifth with Matt Connor and Dan Lovett in sixth and seventh. Matt Connor lets Dan Lovett through on very different strategies, are the Ferraris, and fighting for different things, and the team play coming into order there. Meloon is in 8th after that contact with Bracey down at turn 1 and having to pit to repair his front wing. DGH is in 9th after boxing just a lap ago. Hash is right behind him on the soft compound tyres, which I much say is quite an interesting choice to go on to. Mr. Jabe is in 11th with Matt Tudor in 12th. Paul Codd in 13th. Meldrum is in 14th after, I believe, having disconnected here. Or he's ghosted. I can't tell if he's actually disconnected. It does seem like it, but he's keeping up with Mikey and MCL here as Mikey manages to get through on MCL up into second place. But a major overcut here from the Sauber. And I mean, I'm sure that car is ghosted of Meldrum. And MCL, not lightning quick, even ahead of the lapped, ghosted, disconnected Meldrum.
Not too sure. I mean, I can't really see if he is either, but Paul Codd as well potentially having issues, as this is very confusing at the back, isn't it?
Most certainly. No front wing for Paul Codd, and you would imagine will be coming into the pits as Meldrum picks up a penalty and Paul Codd intentionally crashes out, and that is going to bring out the virtual safety car. You'd imagine that will be looked at in the stewards' room after the race. Definitely not the sort of thing we allow. But that is ideal timing if you are someone like Jamaican Jam, who gets to come in to make a free stop. Mikey follows him in. MCL, again, perfect timing for him as well, doing a massive overcut and would have lost a heap of time had he come in under normal conditions. But not going to lose really any time at all, as Dean Pryor also comes into the pits. Dan Lovett will be the man that stays out, but because of the VSC, won't gain any time. So Jamaican Jam will continue to lead from Mikey, from MCL, from Dean Pryor. Dan Lovett will actually make up some positions, moves up into second place ahead of Mikey, MCL, Dean Pryor. Meloon also stayed out. Bracey came in a lap before. But this VSC has really, I would say, advantage Mikey, advantage MCL.
You would very much think so. And we've spoken a lot about as Dean Pryor now is out. And I was actually on board for that. That did seem a very odd incident. Kind of come to a stop and then suddenly into a spin.
Lewis, I'm going to interrupt you here because what I didn't realise is I saw two people get drive-through penalties under the virtual safety car. I did not realise it was one of the Ferraris, and that Ferrari being Dan Lovett. So the man currently running in third place in this Grand Prix with a drive-through penalty. That is huge for the course of this race, and he comes in to serve it now, but the Ferrari driver will surely lose multiple positions.
That could get very, very ugly for Dan. I saw, as you say as well, I did see drive-through penalties. I wasn't able to see in time who got them. But now, I mean, it puts him down to, it will come out in 6th. Still a good position, a testament really to the consistency, but not where you would normally expect him to be.
Not at all, and running a very good race in the podium places was Dan. But that is truly going to harm his race, especially when you look at the likes of Jamaican Jam, F1 Mikey Boy, MCL and Bracey, who all came into the pits under that virtual safety car, as we've got a Haas way off the track, and that is Meldrum. And that is quite the way off the track, and with no front wing. So around the lap 25 mark, everything seems to be kicking off at the Hungaroring here. No front wings, damage, crashes. It all seems to be happening in the first quarter of this race.
And not even halfway's distance, still plenty to go. And you get the feeling that this is one that we're going to talk about for a long time to come.
Most certainly. MCL is trying to go down the inside on Mikey for second place. The McLaren will try and hold the outside line, but with the DRS, you would imagine this will be an easy move for MCL, but Mikey is going to fight it back, trying to hold the inside line, but MCL swooping around the outside and takes second. They've got 8.8 seconds to Jamaican Jam, but could we see that gap start to come down? The only issue is MCL's just picked up a penalty.
So now it makes his job of winning this race a lot harder. And if you're Jamaican Jam, just breathing a slight sigh of relief. But I'm going to pose a question here that feels like we ask this quite often. Those clouds look quite grey, don't they?
I was thinking that earlier, and I was maybe thinking that's why the likes of Jamaican Jam and whatnot started on the hard compound tyres, maybe staying out on them to go to some drops of rain, but I do think I can see the sun poking through those clouds, and it doesn't look like the heavens are going to open just yet. I will try and get some insider information and see if I can find out if there is any weather on the way. But I wouldn't have imagined that there will be thus far.
think I would have to agree. We've seen before just some slight signs potentially that don't come to be, but that would certainly throw up a very interesting second half of this race, as it feels like we've had everything but rain at this point.
Exactly that. I mean, this race has been quite the palaver, shall we say. And I think rain would be about the only thing that could make it any more interesting. As MCL looks to try and gain away from Mikey, but Mikey doing a very good job of sticking with him. And the McLaren driver, the weird and wacky strategy, it looks to be working, doesn't it, Lewis? As he's only 3/10 behind MCL, not a great exit out the final corner. You would imagine that will keep MCL ahead down into turn 1. But this strategy working absolutely ideally.
Absolutely. He's made the choice, and that choice has paid off hugely, so yeah, have to hand it to him.
Yellow flag at the final corner, and DGH is now out of the session, and we can catch that on the outside of turn 1. I do believe that was a manual retirement, hence no virtual or full safety car. But a man we've not spoken a lot about, Jamaican Jam currently leading. That gap is coming down between Mikey and MCL towards Jamaican Jam, but leading very comfortably 30 laps in, not putting a foot wrong, is the Mercedes-Benz man, and looking very good for a race victory tonight.
Very much one that has been earned. He's just controlled it ever since he got back out in front, so he has done everything he has needed to do. And we know the quality he has, so I am not especially surprised.
Exactly that. It was a mega lap in qualifying to take pole position, and currently having led every lap, as we see Mikey and MCL going for it once more, and Mikey with the DRS looking to get his way past towards the outside, looking to do exactly what MCL did to him just a few laps ago, sweep round the outside, and the McLaren has done exactly that, a move back up into second. And in all of that, the time that they had gained on Jamaican Jam has now completely gone back to what it was.
Now that twists things once more. So where do we go from here?
You would imagine if you are in the cockpit of Mikey or MCL, you will be happy to just sit behind your adversary for now, gain towards the leader, and when you arrive up to the rear wing of that works Mercedes, then you decide to fight. But MCL and Mikey choosing to do battle now, and that is costing them in the hunt for the lead.
Very much so. And can you really blame them though? Because the last thing you want to do is sit behind someone else. But at Hungary, it is a fairly easy thing to do, given how frustrating it can be round here. It is possible to try and overtake someone, have DRS, and not be able to do it for many, many laps, even if you are the quicker driver.
That is a very good point. Behind that battle for second place, we've got Bracy, who is really in no man's land. About a 12-second gap in front of him, a 7.7-second gap behind him. Bracy, you would imagine, probably getting quite tired this evening in that cockpit, but that is the key to these 100% races, is even when it does get boring and you don't really have anyone around you and it feels like you're racing for nothing, that's almost what separates the good from the great, because the good, you can tend to just get a bit of mental fatigue and fall out of the rhythm, but the great drivers, they remain focused and they push on fourth. He is losing time to the battle for second, but is gaining time on the car behind. Dan Lovett still in sixth after serving his drive-through penalty. He's got his teammate Matt Connor about 8 seconds behind him. Closest battle on track at the minute is the battle between MCL and Mikey.
Maybe they are just starting to take the advice you said of sit behind for a little bit. It would certainly be the smarter idea, as we can see, but the ego of a racing driver can get in the way of that sometimes.
Exactly that. You know, you're a racer, you want to be able to fight and you want to be able to try and close up and punish your rivals. It swings and roundabouts, I must say. It can cost you, it can gain you, as we've got another yellow flag, and that's for Matt Tudor, who's gone round in the middle sector. And crucially, I believe MCL has actually fallen. He has fallen out of the DRS of F1 Mikey Boy.
So he's managed to keep himself or get himself back in it, but that could be something that Mikey will look at and just be slightly frustrated that he not only managed to get himself out of it, but has allowed him back in within a very short window. He could have had 0 distractions there, but he's going to have to consider the way through that he was considering for the last 3 or 4 laps.
Crucially, though, in the time that these guys haven't been fighting, that gap to Jamaican Jam has come down about 2.5 seconds. So the McLaren and Sauber duo are looking quicker than Jamaican Jam at this stage of the race. Crucially, they just need to not fight each other. That is all I can really say. There is a backmarker here of Mr. Jabe, and if he doesn't get out of the way soon, this is going to help Mikey. And it is going to help Mikey because he's going to get DRS. So this is only going to pull the pair of them closer to Jamaican Jam. And the lapped McLaren has really helped them out here.
Very much so. And now is the time that they have to capitalize on it. It's now up to them. They can't try and use anyone else's help. Now is the time they have to do it on their own. Jamaican Jam will be fuming with that, I'm imagining. And I would expect he will now try and gain that time back up. He's seen that time slowly drop down as we reach the halfway point. But you would expect that he will want that to go right back up and just secure that lead for a little bit longer.
There was another yellow flag momentarily in the first sector, but all cars pointing in the right direction, so I don't really see what that was for. Mikey has well and truly dropped MCL out of the DRS now and will be able to try and charge on fourth towards Jamaican Jam. 5.9 seconds is the gap now between the pair of them, but ever fluctuating around that 6-second mark. Mikey, at this stage of the race, does look quicker though, as Mr. Jabe comes into the pits and gets a 10-second time penalty in doing so.
So MCL just still around that 1.4 kind of mark. Could be a double-edged sword, you know. DRS will help you stay and just kind of pull you closer, but can also just burn those tyres out in that dirty air. So it could be a smart idea for the next 5-10 laps. Just stick around that point and then try and close in at the later stages. Or could it be a sign that the pace is slowly dropping?
it could be a case of Jamaican Jam trying to save those tyres, trying to just increase the life of them and make the overcut on drivers like Mikey and MCL. Or it could just be that Mikey is that little bit quicker when they're all in clean air. This is really the first true opportunity that Mikey has had to be in clean air. And I mean, you look at what he's doing with the opportunity, looking very, very quick on the exact same tyres as Jamaican Jam, which is the first time that that has happened. And we know Mikey, massive form around Hungary in the past, almost like a Lewis Hamilton around Hungary, always quick every time he comes here. Although that gap is just starting to maybe stagnate a little.
And I think right now, if there's any position you'd want to be in, given the gap in front and behind you, Mikey just starting to kind of get rid of those problems in those early stages. And this is why he is the driver that he is, isn't he? To have had the problems he did in the first 20, these last 17, he has just been in immaculate form.
And I mean, always in immaculate form is Mikey. There is never really a race that you see him and think he could have done better there. Sometimes a little bit of bad luck, but that is what every driver gets. You can never always have the luck of the draw. Matt Connor, picks up a 3-second penalty. And I must say, penalties can be quite crucial around a track like Hungary. Always difficult to try and keep the car between the white lines, especially when this track is so technical and is so difficult on the tyres. Very easy to find yourself running wide 3 times, going off the track, and you'll find yourself with a 3-second penalty. But testament to the 5 drivers in this race that don't have a penalty, running very, very well to keep it that way.
And ever since that drive-through penalty for Dan, nothing really happening for him. Still running in 6th, but bit of a lonely race out there for him. 2.7 away from Maloon, 9.5 in front of his teammate. And we spoke a little bit earlier about how it can be very, very difficult to stay focused when these races are so long. And I think Dan especially could be at risk of, if he isn't focused, with nothing really going on for him at this current point, could be at serious risk that if you take your mind off the game for 1 second, there could be a big incident.
Most certainly that, and drifting through the penultimate corner was Dan Lovett there, a little bit of wheel spin. I must say, what's surprising me at the moment is MCL, ever since he dropped out the DRS of Mikey, has absolutely fallen like a stone. Now 5.6 seconds behind the McLaren driver. Really, really struggling is MCL. And I never thought I'd be saying that.
Neither would I. Really dropping back, as you say, and with that penalty, very much doesn't make for good reading in these last stages of the race. Still plenty of time, as we say, just under halfway through to turn it around. But with what we're going off at the minute, this isn't looking too rosy.
Not at all. I mean, 5.7 seconds is the gap. Mr. Jabe picks up a 3-second penalty for those multiple warnings. And we will quickly take a look at the penalties. 3 seconds for MCL, 3 seconds for Meloon, 6 seconds for Matt Connor and for Hash, 16 seconds for Jabe Jabeson, 31 seconds of penalties for Meldrum. Having a very difficult race and finding it very difficult to keep it in the white lines, evidently.
It can be very, very difficult around a track like this. One mistake and you get punished. And it very much hasn't been the ideal scenario. The good thing for him at this current point is that that penalty wouldn't drop him anywhere else due to his advantage on to 10th, but he needs to make sure that doesn't rack up too much more, because if there is a late safety car, he could be at serious risk. But those at the back, if you were to exclude Matt, finding it very difficult, as you say.
Exactly that. Lap 40 of 70. 30 laps of this race left to go. And it is Jamaican Jam that leads by 5.2 seconds to Mikey Boy. MCL is in third, 6.7 seconds behind. It is then Bracey who finds himself in fourth. 13.1 seconds is the gap between himself and third place. Jamaican Jam doing a good job out in front, managing to continue on with the lead of this one and just keeping calm. That gap did tumble for a little bit between himself and Mikey, but he has now managed to stabilise it absolutely perfectly as Mikey picks up a 3-second penalty.
And that could be a very, very big influence on the result in just under 30 laps time. And that will be music to MCL's ears, I'm sure.
I think that'll also take a little bit of weight off of Jamaican Jam, knowing that that gap was coming down for a little bit. And if that is to happen again, he will be happy to know that realistically, instead of a 5.9 second gap, it's really a, 5, 6, 7 second gap as we now go to 6 seconds. It's about a 9-second gap technically that he's got to the McLaren driver. And we know that catching is one thing in these modern day Formula 1 cars, but especially around a track like Hungary, overtaking is a very different thing.
Absolutely. We've both been in those races where you do have the pace, but provides is a totally different ballgame. You can be quicker, but just that lack of places to overtake is very, very costly.
Most certainly that. And I mean, we even saw that with MCL and Mikey in their fight. It was really all happening at turn 1 and turn 2. And then throughout the rest of the lap, the driver in second place would begin to gain away. And that is really the story of this Hungarian Grand Prix. Is you need to be close out of the final corner to either make a move into turn 1 or set a move up through turn 1 into turn 2. We've got a yellow flag, and that's for Jamaican Jam, the leader, with a moment out of the final corner. Mikey giving the position back, so maybe with an illegal overtake. But where that gap was around 6 seconds, now down to 4/10. And Jamaican Jam, I don't know what caused that incident. I just saw him off out of the final corner. And suddenly, this race has some life once more.
And that, if he doesn't manage to win this race, will be kicking himself under no pressure whatsoever, has dropped that on his own and made these final 27 laps a lot more worrying than they need to be, as there is slight contact between the top two, but this just opens this race up to a straight shootout, with the gap between Mikey and MCL now to a one-on-one shootout between Jam and Mikey.
But the thing is, you can imagine, could this maybe bring MCL back into the fight as they attack each other through the corners? And the downforce obviously going to be a little bit skewed on the older tyres, as the gap around 7/10 out of the final corner. 17 laps the top three have done, well, 18 laps on these hard compound tyres. They definitely will not be feeling the greatest. And while you would imagine they will make another stop, they won't have the best of grip at all.
Absolutely not. And the next few laps for him are very important ones. You've just got to make sure that you don't make any more mistakes. To get that head down, even if you lose the lead at some point, to keep yourself in the right direction and try and start the fight back again.
That will definitely be a mistake that Jamaican Jam will rue if at the end of these 70 laps he is not the man to be drinking the victor's champagne. Is leading, like you say, Lewis, with no pressure whatsoever on him, apart from maybe the somewhat closing gap in behind to Mikey. And out of the final corner, whether it was he just touched the curb a bit too much and had some wheel spin, or went a little bit wide, or just got on the throttle too early, we don't know. But ultimately, sending him round into a spin. And Mikey now comes into the pits, and we know the undercut can be powerful around the Hungaroring. Mikey looking to take his opportunity for the lead of this Grand Prix. Medium tyres go on to the McLaren, and you wouldn't imagine they'll go 35 laps, would you?
I don't think so.
Well, 25 laps, sorry.
They probably could 25, but they could be quite problematic towards the end.
How long was MCL on his medium tyres for? Bracey's been on his for 20. MCL, I think, was on his for about 23, 24. And staying alive, but not very quick.
Yes, but I really don't know whether this is the right strategy. They can definitely last that long. It's just, is the pace going to be there for him to be able to win this race? I don't know. We do have a yellow flag. That was for the Alpine of Malone. Managed to point himself in the right direction though. As normal.
There is damage to the front of that Alpine. Front right end plate has been torn off of the pink and blue liveried Enstone outfitted car. Bracey comes into the pits after 20 laps. I must say, what I find interesting about that choice from Mikey is he has kind of made that strategy himself, because he's used both of his hard compound tyres. Used the first set after the soft run at the start, then used his second set under the virtual safety car. You only get 2 sets of hard compound tyres throughout the race weekend. Mikey either had to use the mediums or use the softs, so kind of forcing himself into that strategy there. Jamaican Jam will also have to go onto the mediums after starting on the hards and then his second stint being the hards. MCL will have another choice of hard compound tyres. So could the Sauber driver maybe be best placed in this race, strategy-wise, because he will have another set of the hards?
I think you very much could be right. How can he use them though? That is the question. And of course, with how tight this has been, that 3-second penalty will be a big indicator. Fastest lap for Mikey. He's clearly happy with the pace he's got at the minute. But could this be him using that pace too quickly and not spreading out that tyre life potentially? It is very, very difficult to make these decisions, especially in 100% races. But if there's a man to trust, it's definitely Mikey.
23 laps remain of this Hungarian Grand Prix. Jamaican Jam leads comfortably from MCL. It is Mikey who's in third after making his, what you would imagine will be final pit stop of the Grand Prix and setting the times alight, as MCL picks up another penalty, and that takes him to 6 seconds of penalties now, and that will harm him in his pursuit of a race victory and in his pursuit of second place. Now, I don't know how much time you lose for a pit stop around here, but 3.1 seconds is the gap between himself and the McLaren of Mikey. So most certainly being undercut. The question is by how much?
He will definitely be having a lot to consider. They very much do seem like, though, that top three, it would be very interesting without a safety car if that top three was to change. I don't think it will. It is just what order does it finish in? And at this current point, even with that slight mistake a few laps ago, you have to point it towards Jamaican Jam.
Definitely so. 9.5 seconds in the lead. MCL carrying a 6-second penalty. Mikey carrying a 3-second penalty. And while you would imagine Mikey will take the lead after those two come into the pit lane, Jamaican Jam will have the better tyres and penalty free, will be able to push on in his pursuit and technically wouldn't actually need to overtake the McLaren driver, as Mikey really begins to gain towards the rear wing of MCL, and MCL runs wide, 4/10 the gap out the final corner. This is surely going to be an easy move for Mikey, and he moves through into second place of this Hungarian Grand Prix. Now 9.9 seconds the gap to Jamaican Jam. He will look to bring that down as quickly as possible, but will definitely need to save some tyre life for the end, because he will need that to then try and defend from Jamaican Jam.
Absolutely. Jam will be looking for this victory. He's been at the top for so long, and anything other than a win, you would have to say, feels like a failure. But there's only one way to avoid that, and that is just, win the race.
Exactly that. Matt Connor dives into the pit lane for a set of the medium compound tyres. We are on lap 49 of 70, about to reach the 50 lap stage, which will leave us with 20 laps of this Hungarian Grand Prix to go. Jamaican Jam being aided by the lapped car of Jabe Jabeson. A little bit of DRS for the Mercedes driver to try and maintain a little bit more of a gap to Mikey, and you can see it just flickering up. You can see how powerful the DRS is around this circuit, about half a second extra pace that it gives you. Further down the order, not really much going on in terms of battles. It really is this top three that's putting on a show for us.
Absolutely. And of course, even though these top three will have most of the airtime, the rest of the drivers have certainly put on a good show for us. And two drivers I want to highlight here that maybe haven't had as much coverage due to the fact they haven't had much going on, just due to that consistency, is the two drivers directly under that podium slot. Bracy in fourth has just run a quiet race, pretty much in fourth place the whole time. And Dan Lovett, since that slight run-in he had with that penalty, has just consistently been there in fifth.
Both of them running very clean races, and I must say Meloun will probably feel a little bit hard done by after that contact with Bracy. Now 18 seconds off of the Williams driver, 7 seconds off of Dan Lovett, who obviously came in earlier to serve a drive-through penalty for speeding under the virtual safety car. And Meloun, I would imagine, not going to be the happiest in the world to end up finishing in 6th. Hash is in 7th for what I believe will be a career best result for the Aston Martin driver, running a very clean race And like I say, gaining valuable experience towards his career. As I'm just going to check as we see Meldrum go very wide and actually go into the wall there. 27 seconds of penalties for Meldrum. Is that not less than when I last looked at it? I was sure that it was 31 seconds of
31?
penalties he had.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming he had a 10-second penalty in there that he has managed to serve, because I was fully expecting him to be on about 40 seconds of penalties by now. But 27 seconds of penalties. Is there going to be any penalty served here in this pit stop for him? That's the question. There isn't, so that is a true 27-second penalty. He changes the front wing, goes on to the soft tyres, which is a bit of a strategy call. And Jamaican Jam, our leader, pits for the final time.
So here is where it gets interesting. Seems like a clean stop gets out nice and well. And now it is just simple one thing, push until the end.
7.6 seconds he has got to MCL. It is then a further 10 seconds up to our current leader. But obviously, with those penalties that these guys have, and you would imagine MCL making another stop, that will get the Sauber out of the way. But for Mikey, a 3-second penalty, and you can see the grip of the fresh medium compound tyres, giving him all that he needs to. Jamaican Jam with, what have we got, 18 laps left of this Grand Prix. Just needs to put the pedal down and not lift until he sees the checkered flag. You can see a McLaren ahead of him. That is Jabe Jabeson, and you would imagine if he can try and sneak into the DRS of the lapped McLaren here, although Jabe gets out of the way in a very good spot and will not give that DRS to Jamaican Jam. Wise there from the lapped McLaren. His teammate currently leading, albeit with a 3-second penalty in Jamaican Jam. You can see the gap. It's coming down at about 2 seconds a lap between himself and the Sauber ahead of him. 4.5 seconds now the gap. And the Mercedes is gaining masses of time.
And you can just see the pace and the desire to win this race. And you'd have to say, out of everyone, he has certainly earned it. And he is not going to leave this down to penalties, you would expect. He very much wants to win this himself.
And I mean, you can see the gap coming down at all times here as the Mercedes driver, you can just see on board with him how much grip he's got, how determined he is to further himself in this race. And all the time, it is coming down between them. Lap 54 of 70. And the Mercedes working very, very well. And on a weekend where Mercedes in the real F1 found a real turn of speed, Jamaican Jam and the Works Mercedes outfit here in NRRL doing the exact same thing.
Absolutely. And as we say, he's not going to be leaving this to chance. He is taking this one for himself, and it could be less than a lap's time that we have a battle between the Sauber and the Mercedes here.
8 tenths is now the gap, and he's caught him at a pretty poor time. Dirty air is a big factor on F125, and that will harm his tyres, will harm his tyre temperatures, and ultimately will slow him down, and Jamaican Jam will want to get through at the first available opportunity. Meldrum is round once more, and that is what's causing the yellow flag in the middle sector. But Jamaican Jam, surely this will be an easy move for him out of the final corner. 14.6 seconds is the gap between MCL and Mikey. As through the final corner we go now. And again, MCL going wide, just as he did with Mikey. And Jamaican Jam breezes through and up into second place. And will now begin the charge to try and claw back at Mikey. 15 laps to gain 11 seconds on the McLaren. Most certainly doable as long as he can keep the pace up.
Absolutely. Just under a second a lap he would need. Obviously, he would rather win it on track, but he only needs to gain 10 seconds, or 11 seconds really, to have this one in the bag. He certainly can do it. It is going to be difficult, but luckily for him, no MCL anywhere near him to distract him, and you get the feeling he just might be able to.
That is the thing. He's got to gain 10 seconds to get within the penalty window of Mikey. The tyre difference will definitely pay dividends. 3 lap-old mediums for Jamaican Jam, 11 lap-old mediums for Mikey Boy. This is lap 56 of 70, and Jamaican Jam purple in the final sector. And he is gaining time, and he is gaining it quite quickly. 12.7 seconds. Now the gap between the McLaren and the Mercedes, both powered by Mercedes engines. And McLaren, it is almost like the real F1. We've seen them be so dominant, McLaren and Mikey. But on very, I wouldn't say rare occasions, but on certain occasions when the track is right and the driver is dialed in, the Mercedes works very well, and that is exactly what the combination of Jamaican Jam and Mercedes-Benz are pulling off here tonight.
And he seems very much like he's... It's very, very tight to call this, but I think he very much looks like he will. It's so close that you can't take your eyes off the timing sheets, can you?
Well, I mean, I've taken my eyes off it because we've got a big, big battle here going on between Hash and Matt Connor. There was massive contact between them down at turn 1, and that's given Matt Connor damage to, I believe, his left side end plate, and Hash is really looking to gain as Meldrum is off the track and into the wall and has lost his entire front wing. So you would imagine we'll be back into the pit lane for a new one at any point. The Aston Martin of Hash right on the back of the Ferrari of Matt Connor. And Hash has been running a very good race as Meldrum gets a 10-second penalty. Now up to 40 seconds in penalties is the Hash driver. And Hash running a very good race in 8th. Trying to make it 7th. I don't believe there's damage to the Aston Martin. There isn't. So we'll have more grip turning in. But Matt Connor using his battery wisely. Hash maybe just not got the experience fighting for positions as Matt Connor has. And using his battery absolutely everywhere that he can. And that isn't really aiding him in his pursuit of the Ferrari.
Can be very, very difficult around tracks like this, as we've said all night. And especially at a track like this, if you're just close to someone, but you get closer to them and can't quite pass them, it can be very, very disheartening. And just almost needs to pressure him into a mistake he almost has there. Can't quite take advantage. Not really much in the way of ERS either. And in these final 10 laps, still a chance to get that 7th place, but must be incredibly frustrating.
Well, I think, like I say, a lot more experience for Matt Connor. You can see him just gaining back the battery through pretty much the entire middle sector. Hash is not doing that. And that means into the real overtaking zone of turn 1, Matt Connor has all the speed and Hash does not. As Hash, with a little bit of oversteer through turn 1, is going to lose a lot of time. 9.4 seconds is the gap between our leaders, and it does look like Jamaican Jam is doing enough to try and rock up to the back of the McLaren and seal a race victory around what has been quite a legendary circuit in NRRL history. And this will only add one more page to the chapter of this calendar.
So 8 seconds with 11 to go. 6 seconds needed to gain, but as we've said, he will very much want to win this race on his own accord. Still going at a very strong pace. Might just get a little helping hand here if he can get into the DRS of the Sauber. That might pull him along just a little bit more. The Sauber actually gets out of the way beforehand.
This might be a weird point to make, but I mean, it is lap 60 of 70. Admittedly, it's not been the most entertaining race, so we're going to turn to a bit of Le Mans commentary here. But I'm sure that this track has the closest DRS detection line to actual DRS operation line on the calendar. I don't even think it's 100 meters between detecting the DRS and then opening the DRS around this track, which I find quite weird, I must say, as we've got a yellow flag for Mr. Jabe out of the final corner.
Yeah, now that you say that, I am thinking about it. It's very, very quick.
You know, most tracks you have the detection line, then you have a corner, then a bit of a straight, then the DRS. And if you go on board with Mikey here, Lewis, so we come round the penultimate corner, we get on the power, there's the detection line, and then you just come round this right-hander, there's your DRS line. There's barely even a corner between them.
Just trying to think what would be the track closest to that, apart from Hungary.
I would have imagined
like
Jeddah in the middle
I
sector.
would have said either Jeddah or potentially Mexico.
No, I wouldn't have imagined Mexico.
I'm just trying to think of where the line actually would be.
It's just into the final corner, but it's quite a way down the straight that you open the DRS in Mexico. Whereas Jeddah, you go through the middle sector and you have the first DRS zone, and then the detection zone is just before the chicane, and you open the DRS pretty much immediately out of the chicane.
Yeah.
Always bringing you absolutely brilliant insight. We are here in the commentary booth at NRRL, and crucially for this race, the gap is just starting to stagnate a bit between Jamaican Jam and Mikey. It's still coming down, but not at the rate it was at all.
A very, very interesting sign for these final 8 laps now. As we say, only needs another 3.5 seconds, and in 8 laps that is more than achievable. But has Mikey just potentially got one last little sign of pace? He could potentially get DRS down the straight on the next lap, as 2 cars in the way. That's an Aston Martin and a Ferrari of Hash and Matt Connor still fighting away. Meldrum comes into the pits. Will this be to retire? Not too sure.
I think the crucial thing for Mikey here is those two cars ahead, Hash and Matt Connor, they're not going to want to one-lap themselves because they're in a fight. So Mikey is going to get DRS here. Because these two cars are fighting, they don't want to get out of the way. They've been given the blue flag multiple times, but they don't want to budge.
Can you blame them?
Mikey does manage to go through on Hash, but that DRS will be giving him absolutely massive aid, as Matt Connor now needs to try and find the time to let Mikey past without letting Hash past. Because Hash is right on the gearbox of Mikey, as I'm actually going to go on board with Hash here, who obviously is ghosted, as is Matt Connor, because of the fact that they're being lapped. And I must say, late shout for a contender for a podium, Bracy, as MCL comes into the pits very late on. Bracy goes well through. Dan Lovett also goes through. And Matt Connor does manage to let Mikey pass, and there's contact between Hash and Matt Connor as he now throws it down the inside as the Aston Martin. That was a very desperate move, and you would imagine that will probably be the last of their fight for the rest of this Grand Prix, because Matt Connor is going to get DRS off of Mikey. But for Bracy, I mean, he's only got a 3-second penalty. MCL now with 9 seconds in penalties. I do really think that Bracy is going to finish on the podium here after having probably the quietest race that we've seen in the league. Or at least in this race. We've maybe mentioned him twice in the entirety of the Grand Prix. Is surely going to come through for a podium.
And he's just ran his race. As you say, it's been very quiet, but he's done everything he needed to do. Jamaican Jam, that gap at 4.1. Only 1.2 seconds needed. So even still, that DRS did not really extend that lead by too much.
And crucially, Jabe Jabeson ahead is on soft compound tyres. So Jamaican Jam might have the potential of getting some DRS from him. If not, he is very soon going to rock up onto the back of this battle between Hash and Matt Connor. So maybe that will be made dividends as Jabe Jabeson is lapped. So he will just go straight through the pair of them. Hash is gaining towards Matt Connor. Towards turn 1 we go. Is he going to throw it down the inside? He is. It's a bit of a half and half move. Somewhat backs out of it. And now you insert Jamaican Jam right behind them. Will he get the DRS back? 3.5 seconds now as MCL moves through on Dan Lovett. Dan needs to try and stay within 9 seconds of MCL if he wants to nick 4th place off him. I think that will be a tall order as Dan Lovett on 19 lap old hards, MCL on new softs. But it's definitely not an impossible task. MCL has to gain 11 seconds to try and get his podium back, then plus 6 seconds because of the penalties he's accumulated. This is not going to be easy as Hash gets lapped by Jamaican Jam. When does Matt Connor let the Mercedes through? It seems it is going to be now, and it is. So no DRS for Jamaican Jam. 3.8 seconds the gap now. Lap 65 of 70. We're about to go on to lap 66 as Jabe Jabeson sets the fastest lap of the race and might actually be giving his... He is giving his teammate DRS.
Wow. So, not illegal So you have to exploit the rules when they're there. So you can't do anything but really commend it, can you?
It doesn't look like he did it on purpose, as he is now running away from his teammate. I must say that would have been quite genius if they did do that on purpose. But it seems to all be being played fair. 3.5 seconds is the gap between Jamaican Jam and Mikey. And this is really coming down to the wire, isn't it, Lewis?
Absolutely. 3.4 seconds. 3/10 needed. But with how this is turning out, it is certainly not over yet. He is very, very close to being within that window. He is now in that window. Could he potentially catch him here?
I think that would be a taller order with the dirty air that you do start to feel around 2 seconds behind. But all he's got to do now is just keep it behind and make sure he doesn't make another mistake as MCL picks up another penalty. That will promote him to 12 seconds. And not only will that harm him more in his pursuit of Bracy, Dan Lovett, only 6 seconds behind, could well be on for a 4th placed finish here. And Jamaican Jam is pulling that gap down still between himself and Mikey. And I don't really want to say anything on it because of the old commentator's curse. But it's looking good.
Absolutely. And as we say every single race, whoever wins it will have had to earn it and will deserve it. But you get the feeling Jamaican Jam might just deserve it that little bit more, as there is a McLaren facing the wrong way.
Mr. Jabe evidently making a mistake and going round, and I'm sure that probably scared the living daylights out of F1 Mikey boys. He wasn't that far behind him. Probably came round that corner completely blind and saw his teammate absolutely sideways. It isn't something that you want to see, but 2 laps left of this Hungarian Grand Prix, and Jamaican Jam is well within that buffer now to try and win himself the Hungarian Grand Prix. And I am going to quickly go and look at the race results. I believe Jamaican Jam has won before, but I am just going to make sure.
So 1.3 seconds. He probably won't pass him, but he might get close. And, I mean, that won't matter now. Unless he makes a mistake, has this pretty much wrapped up.
And I must say, crucially, in this race, Jamaican Jam will take the lead of the Tier 1 Championship with this result. He will overtake I Have No Grip, who retired from this session and was the championship leader. And Jamaican Jam running a very consistent season as we move on to the penultimate lap of this race. In the Tier 2 Championship, it's currently Dan Lovett who leads. And the only men beating him are not in his tier. So Dan Lovett will extend his championship lead out in front in Tier 2.
And just a quiet race for him today, but not quiet in the aspect of a bad one, just consistent. Although Maloon, with that penalty, obviously it won't manage to get him back in front, is closing up to him. We could see a potential fight on the last lap. Although obviously, as we say, position won't count. But could drum up some last lap entertainment. And in terms of last lap entertainment, Jamaican Jam is right on him.
And I must say, MCL has obviously had a moment somewhere. No, MCL's disconnected. Or has he? Because he's just driving very slowly. No damage to the Sauber. And he's ran out of fuel. MCL has ran out of fuel, and that is going to drop him behind Meloon, behind Dan Lovett, and is basically going to guarantee Bracy a podium, as now the two leaders battle, and Jamaican Jam, we knew would want to win it on track, and as Mikey goes wide, that confirms it for Jamaican Jam. He retakes the lead of the race that he led for so long, and is just half a lap away now from calling himself a winner once more.
And one very much well earned. He had to fight for it, but he's fought all the way and is the deserving winner.
As he comes now through the final couple of corners, he has won once before in the Sunday Tiers. Well, he will now make it a double, and with this victory, will take the championship lead. For Mercedes and Jamaican Jam, it is dreamland in Hungary as he crosses the line to win the Hungarian Grand Prix. It is F1 Mikey Boy who will come home for second place for McLaren, and for Bracy, after running an incredibly consistent race and a beautiful drive from the Williams man, comes home to finish in third after gaining 7 positions. Dan Lovett will come home for fourth to strengthen his championship lead in the Tier 2 division, with Meloon in 5th, and MCL, it's going to be a while before he finishes this race, running out of fuel on, I believe, the penultimate lap. So really under-fueling was the Sauber. And an unfortunate day for him after being in the battle for the lead for so long. Now out of this race, essentially, down in 6th place. As we've then got Matt Connor, who will finish in 7th. It will be Hash with, I believe, a best race result of 8th. Matt Tudor finishes 9th, with Mr. Jabe in 10th. Meldrum taking 11th, with DGH, Dean Pryor, Paul Codd, I Have No Grip, Dinosaur and Ryan Brooks all failing to reach the flag.
So, those 70 laps flew by, didn't they?
Most certainly.
A very
And
entertaining one.
I would have had to say this has been an important race for the championship, I believe.
I'd have to agree there. And Mikey, even though he hasn't won, we saw the start to recover to second and starting 4th anyway. That's a very good result.
Most certainly that. Jamaican Jam takes to the podium for the 2nd time as a Formula 1 race winner. And there is your confirmation then. Jamaican Jam wins the Hungarian Grand Prix. It is F1 Mikey Boy who finishes in 2nd. Bracy finishes 3rd. Dan Lovett is in 4th, with Meloon 5th, MCL 6th, Matt Connor in 7th, Hash in 8th, Matt Tudor 9th, and Mr. Jabe in 10th, with Meldrum 11th, DGH, Dean Pryor, Paul Codd, I Have No Grip, Dinosaur and Ryan Brooks failing to reach the flag. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Always a pleasure to be here. We'll be back on Tuesday for the 50% division. If you have enjoyed, drop a follow down below. TikTok and Twitch, the only 2 places that you can follow us live. Once again, thank you very much.